Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. Appreciate all of you coming and hanging out with me. I'm starting a little bit later than normal today because I wanted to watch The Jump, which is ESPN's live show about the NBA, which I don't know if it's taped or not, the aspects of the show that Rachel Nichols is currently appearing on from Shanghai. So the show is, I think, live, but she may be taped. I don't know. Regardless, this is one of, if not the most shameless and shameful performances I have ever seen by a sports television network in carrying water for the NBA and in carrying water for China. This was effectively a PR infomercial from China. Zero opinion, zero analysis. This is pathetic. Rachel Nichols went on ESPN when the NBA pulled the All-Star game from Charlotte, North Carolina, and compared that heroic decision to the lunch counter sit-ins in the 1960s. She praised the NBA to the high heavens over what was a thoroughly absurd decision that is now coming back to bite them in the ass, just like the decision to remove the word owner did. If you are going to be an uber woke, uber politically active organization, then if you're going to stand up to people over the use of the word owner, and if you are going to analyze individual state legislation and decide to relocate your All-Star game over that, then by God, you cannot do what the NBA is doing right now in allowing China to kick its ass all over the place. China came out today and said, and I quote, "They are still angry at the NBA. They have pulled all of the NBA preseason games off of Chinese television." And they said, and I quote, "We are strongly dissatisfied and opposed Adams' claim." They didn't even give him his last name. Adams' claim to support Morey's rights of free expression. "We believe," this is what China said now, "we believe that any speech that challenges national sovereignty and social stability is not within the scope of freedom of speech." Hold on a minute. China has lost its damn mind. All right? This is where the NBA and all the other woke sports media should be saying, wait a minute. China just told the NBA, and I quote, "We believe that any speech that challenges national sovereignty and social stability is not within the scope of freedom of speech." What they say did that? Houston Rockets GM Daryl Morey saying, "I believe in democracy," effectively. If you are the NBA and you are a reporter who covers the NBA, if you are a player, if you are a coach, if you are an executive, you cannot stand on the sideline here when America's embrace of democracy is being challenged. This is a time where any journalist with a brain, a soul, or any semblance of balls would step up and call out the NBA for not standing up for itself and for American values. And any company, and I got Disney square in my sights here, any company that allows that broadcast that I just watched live from China to exist cannot be trusted at all, because they have sold their soul so far down the river that they aren't even allowing their reporters to say what they actually believe. Because I refuse to believe that Rachel Nichols could be such a huge hypocrite that she could compare the transgender bathroom bill to the civil rights sit-ins and not say a damn word when China says we don't believe in freedom of speech, we don't believe in democracy, and the NBA has to bend the knee and apologize to us, and the NBA so far has done it. Adam Silver is pathetic. He is looking like a lame loser who is unwilling to stand up for the country that has made him fabulously wealthy. And I got to tell you, the idea that Disney would sell out to protect the NBA and its relationships with China is the entire basis of a South Park episode that Trey Parker and Matt Stone absolutely nailed. There are some aspects of American society that are undeniable, whether you are a Democrat, whether you are a Republican, whether you are an independent. And that is, in my opinion, the primacy of the right of free speech. So you may not agree with what Daryl Morey said, but by God, if you are Adam Silver, if you are Rachel Nichols, if you are anybody that is a red-blooded American, you got to go to the wall to defend their right to say whatever they believe. And if you are a player, if you are James Harden, you can't show up and apologize. James Harden apologized for his boss, Daryl Morey, embracing democracy. He apologized to China for that. And Steve Kerr, who has opinions on every political issue that has existed in the last 3 years. Steve Kerr's out here with immigration policy opinions. Steve Kerr's out here with gun control opinions. Steve Kerr's out here analyzing every single tweet that Donald Trump sends all day long, every day. And do you know what happened? When Steve Kerr was asked if he had any comment on the situation in China, he said, I don't. And he flimmed and flammed around and he said absolutely nothing. This dude's got an opinion on every political issue there's ever been. He's always talking about Donald Trump. He's always letting it be known, I won't go visit the White House. I would never think about going to visit the White House. But he's perfectly fine with China imprisoning millions of people, with 1 billion people in China not having basic human rights. To me, Steve Kerr not having an opinion on this is like not having an opinion on whether all people should have access to clean water and clean air and schooling. This isn't a political issue. If you are an American, you should believe that democracy is the best form of government in the world, and you should embrace it with every opportunity that you get. But what's fascinating about this is, do you know what all these athletes who go and say they're not going to visit Donald Trump in the White House say? I'm not going to give my platform to him. That's like the big argument, right? I'm not going to give him my platform. It's like Megan Rapinoe and all the U.S. women. We're not going to allow him to profit off our platform. Yet you will allow all these totalitarian, communistic, dictator-led countries to profit off your platform? This is crazy. This is absolute insanity. And if you are a member of the media, I just want to tell you all this. Sit back and look at how many of these woke journalists who praise Steve Kerr to the high heavens, who praise Greg Popovich to the high heavens, who praise LeBron James to the high heavens, who praise Adam Silver to the high heavens, who praise Rachel Nichols to the high heavens. Look at how many of them don't have a word to say right now. They're not willing to come out and support the First Amendment or Daryl Morey's right to say what he said. China is saying Americans don't have the rights that they have when you are in our country. We don't believe in what you value. We don't believe in human rights. We don't believe in the freedom of speech. We don't believe in democracy. And you know what? There's hardly anybody with a big audience in all the world of the NBA, their media, their players, their coaches. Everybody has gone completely silent on this. They're not saying a single thing about this. I want you to keep this in mind the next time an athlete tries to talk to you about how they're going to use their platform. I want you to keep this in mind the next time you hear a coach go after Donald Trump. that when they faced real issues, when they faced legitimate political opposition, when they faced a potential hit to their pocketbook which could cost them money, do you know what all of them did? They turned tail and they said nothing at all. That to me is when real courage is on the line. It's easy right now to be in the woke resistance and say, oh, Donald Trump is evil. Oh, he's the new Hitler. Oh, this is the worst time to ever live in the history of the world. I don't know how we're going to do it. What's challenging isn't when you preach to the choir. What's challenging is when you say what needs to be said, no matter the consequences. And I want you to look at how many cowards there are in the NBA. How much of their woke BS is blowing up in their faces right now. I wouldn't be criticizing the NBA at all if they had said, you know what, we're not a political organization. We're never going to get involved in politics. They hadn't moved their all-star game out of Charlotte. They hadn't made the decision to replace the word owner. If they hadn't had all these players out there ripping Donald Trump, all these coaches, and if Adam Silver hadn't been encouraging it. If all that hadn't happened and they just said, you know what, we're just a league that plays games. That's all we do. We play basketball. But no. They set the precedent of we're more than basketball players. We are not going to just shut up and dribble. We are going to use our platform to change the world. And you know what you're doing? You are saying nothing at all when China walks up and smacks you in the face. In fact, even worse than that, you're saying, if you're Adam Silver and James Harden and Steve Kerr and Rachel Nichols, thank you, sir. Can I please have another? Disney should be ashamed of itself. ESPN should be ashamed of itself. Every organization out there that isn't going after this to the high heavens should be ashamed. You know what? I got to give him credit. You know the only ESPN person I've seen on social media actually going after China in this respect? Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann and I don't agree on a lot of stuff. He's insulted me a great deal before. I fired back at him. I got to give Keith Olbermann credit. He went right after China. He did. Almost no one else has. All those woke talkers, big talkers, awfully silent on this. ESPN had 3 days to get ready for what they were going to say on a live show from China. And you know what they did? Absolutely nothing. Now, let's go to Steve Kerr again. Steve Kerr, if he had said, you know what, I'm not really a democracy guy, I'm more of a communist guy. That's an answer. I don't agree with him, but thanks to the fact that he lives in the United States of America, he could have that opinion. I don't have an opinion on massive human rights violations in China. Ain't an answer, bro. It just isn't. And it's not in any way defensible based on how common Steve Kerr's comments on politics have been on every other issue under the sun. Steve Kerr has opinions on everything. Gun control, immigration, Donald Trump's latest tweets, every foreign policy issue under the sun. Greg Popovich too, they disappear. They absolutely disappear. And some people out there, they're losers, right? They say, what do you have to say about Donald Trump? I'm not a Trump guy, right? Never been, didn't vote for Donald Trump. I think he does some things that I like, some things that I don't like every other president there's ever been. But let me just tell you, Donald Trump in 3 years has been tougher on China than the other 40 years worth of presidents before him. You may not agree with Donald Trump on anything, but this idea that Donald Trump has somehow gone easy on China is crazy if you pay attention to any of the news at all. If anything, Donald Trump has gone way overboard in his criticisms of China relative to every prior American president. We're talking about serious, consequential penalties that have been levied against China. All right? So, a lot of you out there are not very smart who want to try to draw Trump into this. If anything, you really just don't actually have any concept of the overall geopolitical situation. But I'm not even focused on that. I'm focusing on a woke league that has made the decision to be woke, and when they face a true attack on American values, they're not willing to respond. And this is not partisan. Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, Julian Castro, Andrew Yang, all of them have condemned China and the NBA on the left. On the right, you've got Ted Cruz, you've got Marco Rubio, you got the senator from Missouri, all of them Republicans going after the NBA as well. The only positive I can say about this in general is that somehow at least Donald Trump, in an era where everybody has a polarizing opinion, Trump, Hillary, whatever angle you want to go on, the NBA has been so bad in their response to China that they have united the entirety of the political spectrum in condemnation of their stupidity. So that's at least a positive in some form or fashion. And this, my friends, is something that remains unbelievable. I'll also tell you this. I think that Disney and ESPN are intentionally underplaying this China confrontation in an effort to try to avoid aggravating China and impacting whether the latest Marvel movie gets to play in China or not. That's the larger geopolitical part of this story as well. China so owns Disney now that Disney regularly bends the knee and does whatever China asks. They got a park in Shanghai. They got a park in Hong Kong. The last thing Disney wants is to somehow anger their bosses in China. And so they are instructing ESPN, which is in partnership with the NBA, which pays $1 billion for the league. This is craven crony capitalism at its worst. These are a bunch of companies bending the knee to a totalitarian regime to try to avoid this situation costing them more money than it already is. ESPN praised the NBA to the high heavens over the decision to move the All-Star game out of Charlotte. They praised the NBA to the high heavens over all the woke comments that Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich and LeBron James make. And when push comes to shove and a legitimate conflict emerges, that network is totally lost, untrustworthy, dishonest, and worst of all, not even remotely involved in journalism. It was interesting. Bob Lee, who used to be the journalistic heart and soul of ESPN, he's retired now, but he put up a tweet. There's a tweet from Tiananmen Square, showed back in 1989, the democratic protesters in China, a guy confronting a tank. If you haven't seen this picture or this video, look it up. Fortunately, we don't have the great firewall of China in America, and we can actually use the internet. And if you look that picture up, read about the video, read about the story in general, but Bob Lee put up that picture, and it had a simple caption with it: block or charge. The NBA wants to believe that they are exporting democracy to the world through basketball. The reality is they are being captured by a communist dictatorial regime in China, which is using them to further solidify their power and also using them as a convenient foil to make an example of in the midst of a trade war with the United States that we need to win. All right? That's the simple truth of what's going on here in a larger context. But what you should be disappointed by, I believe, is how few people in sports media are actually worthy of being trusted in a story like this, and how pathetic it is that the NBA, which should be a paragon of American exceptionalism, is bending the knee to dictators in China over money. And that's a big question I asked about on the radio show this morning. I said, at some point, doesn't the NBA have enough? At some point, if you're James Harden and LeBron James, isn't it worth your soul to be able to stand up for something instead of constantly bending the knee to make a little bit more money? If LeBron James got off that plane went to his press conference in China and said, I have something important to say. I believe all 1.4 billion people in China should have the same rights that we have in America. I believe in the export of democracy. I believe in American exceptionalism. I'm glad that we are a shining city on a hill, and I want to bring the light of American democracy and shine it upon the world. You know what he would do? Sell fewer shoes in China. You know what he would do, though? Become the Muhammad Ali of his generation. Because that is what Ali would do. He wouldn't go James Harden and apologize to China for American democracy existing. But LeBron won't do that because LeBron is ultimately a corporate shill. He says whatever Nike tells him to say. Nike decided that equality was a good slogan. They use LeBron James to sell it, even though they pay 20 cents an hour to people to make LeBron James's equality sneakers. LeBron James could easily go out to Nike and say, you know what? I want every Nike shoe made in America. I want you to bring all these jobs back to the Midwest in Ohio, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin. I want my shoes to be made by poor kids in Akron making above minimum wage, even if that means your profit margins go down, and even if that means I make less money to endorse them, because I think it's important for poor kids in Akron to get jobs. LeBron James doesn't do that. LeBron James could easily say, you can make other shoes overseas. I want every bit of my Nike shoes to be made in America. If we're going to charge people $200 for them, I at least want them to be made in America. Doesn't do that. If LeBron James lived out the equality screed, which he is using to sell more sneakers, he would stand up to China and he would say, I believe all 1.4 billion people in China are equal to Americans. They should have the same rights that we do. He won't say that. Doesn't say that. He's bought and sold. It's all about the money. Woke progressivism is BS. When push comes to shove, all these bastions of woke equality all disappear. They run and they hide. All right, I love all of you. Quickly on Baker Mayfield. Much less serious news. How about that beatdown that Baker took in San Francisco? Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, is trying to execute a fundamental paradigm shift. He's trying to be something that a starting quarterback who wins in the NFL has never been, and that is an outspoken playmaker like a wide receiver might be, right? The truth of the matter is this. This is good life advice in general. Find people who do your profession the best and model yourself on what they do. Only change if you believe you have found something that you can do better than them. Tom Brady, can you think of a single thing he's ever said to fire up an opponent in his entire career? Peyton Manning, ditto. Russell Wilson. If I were Baker Mayfield, I would be saying, do what Tom Brady did, do what Peyton Manning did, do what Russell Wilson does. Play quarterback, shut your mouth, perfect your craft, go win. You don't need to respond and talk about everything. Now, I know there's a controversy over whether or not he shook Richard Sherman's hand, but you have become so outspoken that when you saw Nick Bosa plant the flag, he was planning that the entire season for when he knew he was going to play against Baker Mayfield. Nick Bosa played at Ohio State. Baker Mayfield planted the flag at Ohio State after Oklahoma won that game. He's giving fuel to the people who hate him with his commentary. If you want to succeed in the NFL, it's hard enough even no matter what at the quarterback position, but it's made almost impossible when you make yourself the most hated man in the league, when you can't stop talking, when you won't shut up your mouth and just play. This, to me, is a flaw of Baker Mayfield's game. I think it's being exploited this year. The guy's got a boulder-sized chip on his shoulder. At some point, you have to let that go. You're the number one overall pick in the NFL. People either going to love or hate you, but ultimately, you have to prove whether or not you can win standing on your own. He's not behaving in a smart way, and I think it's hurting his team overall. All right, I love all of you. I'm going to be live on FS1, our sports gambling show. Lock it in, 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. Kisses. I'll be live 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Just keep your eyes peeled. Will anybody at Disney? Will anybody at ESPN? Will Rachel Nichols? Will Steve Kerr? Will Greg Popovich? Will Adam Silver? Will LeBron James? Will any of them actually stand up to China and embrace American values? So far, none of them have. And the clock is still kicking. Love you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. I'll talk to you on television shortly. See y'all. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See ya.